So I've had some people asking me about how to set up a Minimoto or a pit bike for stunting. So I figured I'd go over just some of the basics. Mine is actually a little bit more intricate because I actually put the KX65 front end on mine so I could have the disc brake, which that front end bolts right on, but you have to cut a 1/2 inch out of the stem that goes through your frame neck there. But it fits up pretty well, and as you can see, I got hydraulic brakes and stuff like that now. These things come with just a regular drum brake down there, which isn't quite as strong. Everything's pretty standard over here. I don't even have an aftermarket brake lever, which is a very good investment. You can see mine's bent pretty bad. It's been chewed up a little bit whenever it falls over there on that side, but I don't, you know, all that stuff's pretty factory. Everything in the motor is factory. I did put a stiffer shock on mine. This is actually a 50 shock that I found that I just made it fit. And it's a real, you know, heavy duty shock so that I don't have as much flex whenever I'm trying to get the front wheel up. That helps you get the front wheel up a little easier. I shortened the stock exhaust just a little bit so that it wouldn't be in my way quite so much whenever I was doing wheelies, and so it would be louder since I use this bike for stunt shows and such. Everything on the rear is pretty much still factory, except for I've got some 50 stunt pegs on the back of it, which are good for protection and for standing on for different tricks and things. You can see that the handbrake assembly that comes from 50stunt.com, I have that installed. I'll go over that in just a second. Aftermarket sprocket here, a little bit larger sprocket. This particular one is actually a 42 tooth sprocket. I can't remember what the stock size is, but I'm pretty sure it's about 12 teeth up from the factory. It's, I don't know, it's something crazy up from the factory sprocket to help get it up, give it a little bit more power off the bottom end. Just an aftermarket folder shifter here. You'll find that anytime you fall on the left side of these things, just like the stock brake lever does, they want to bend and get all crazy. So it's really good to have that flex whenever you fall over in your shifter lever. And up on the bars, I do have some aftermarket bars here. They're a little bit taller, makes it more comfortable. I'm actually 6'1", so it makes it a whole lot more comfortable for me whenever I'm trying to ride the smaller bikes to have taller bars. And this is not a clutch. A lot of people, whenever they first get on the bike, they think that's a clutch lever, but this is actually my handbrake. The 110s, this is a KLX 110, and the 110s don't have a clutch. It's got the quote-unquote automatic clutch. So this is just a handbrake right here, and it goes to the rear brake like I was showing you a little bit ago. See if I can get a view of that. Whenever you pull in the handbrake, it does the same thing as whenever you hit the foot lever there. So that's really the essential parts. If you're trying to set up a 110 or a 50 or whatever for stunting, to me, the only essential parts are trying to have some bigger bars to get the more leverage, and a handbrake. You know, if you're going to do any seat standers or spreaders or anything where you don't want to have to cover your rear brake. And then these pegs. The pegs made a really big difference for me coming off of sport bikes and things like that. If I wanted to do staggered stand-ups, which is where you have your left foot on the peg and then your right foot covering the rear brake, that's a really good way to get started. But anything, if you're trying to get, you know, variable tricks and things like that, if you're trying to do combos or anything along those lines, it's really good to have the stunt pegs and that handbrake. The rear tire that I have on here is a Dunlop TT92, which is a really expensive tire, but it's really sticky and works really well. It's very stable. That's a 120 by 12 on the rear, and then a 14-inch front. I'm usually not quite as picky about what I put on the front. This particular one is a 70/90/14, and it's just an IRC, which is not, you know, anything fancy. It's certainly not a fancy tire. So there you have it. If you guys have any questions, feel free to let me know. First technique is where you use your shifter. Put it all the way in neutral, put it in first gear, get going. There's the neutral, and it comes up. So we'll try it again. Starting out in neutral, first gear. Going. finding that delicate balance between rear brake, which would be the handbrake or your foot brake, and giving it the right amount of throttle. Now, as far as using the rear pegs, my most comfortable position with my height is to both feet on the rear pegs and use only my handbrake, particularly whenever I'm doing circles. So you can get the bike up in the air. Once you get the bike up, you basically lean to your left side. The bike kind of wants to automatically start leaning in and doing circle wheelies. I'll give you an idea. Watch what my left hand is doing, using this handbrake and gassing it with the throttle just a little bit to keep it between the balance point. Giving a little bit of gas and leaning back. Once it's up, just a delicate balance between giving it gas and fluctuating on how much handbrake you're giving it. See, I'm always covering the handbrake the whole time. As long as you're covering that handbrake, you always have an escape route if you get too high. The reason I switched over to the disc brake, the KX65 front end, was because I wanted number one, I wanted hydraulic brakes as opposed to a cable, and I also wanted the disc brakes as opposed to the drum brakes on the stock KLX 110s and DRZ 110s because it's a lot stronger. Endos, pretty simple. The hardest part is just kind of getting over your fear of going over the bars, because it can and will happen, and it happens very often. But you want to lean your weight forward, which is a big part of it that a lot of people don't really grasp very quickly. But make sure you're leaning your weight forward and smooth on the brake whenever you're first learning how you want to be smooth, and then kind of jam on it a couple times just to see what it's going to take to get the rear wheel up. But hopefully you'll be able to see my hands, and it might kind of give you an idea of what I'm doing. I'll just go back and forth a little bit. Do a couple of them going down the road here. Just getting a feel for how much brake it takes to get the rear wheel off the ground. Once the rear wheel comes up, how is your bike going to react? How's your suspension going to react? Which, my suspension is actually very loose.